Hey everyone, I'm Gabe Martinez, Director of Product Marketing for DevOps here at OpenText, and I'm actually really excited to be moderating this panel about DevSecOps, one of our favorite topics to talk about. So we just have 20 minutes together today, but my goal is to give you the best possible advice, insights, all of that for implementing a strong AI-powered DevSecOps culture within your organization. But I'm going to need your help to achieve this goal, so get your questions ready. And we've got a great panel of experts today. We've got Alan Schimmel, CEO of Textron Group, well-known DevOps and security industry thought leader. Alan was actually in Texas, my home state, this week. So I think he's back in the friendly confines of Florida. We've also got John Falk, DevOps pre-sales manager here at OpenText as well. Rob Arrego, chief security strategist at OpenText for our cybersecurity side of the house. And Kelly Glendler, DevOps practice manager, part of our solutions consulting organization. So first and foremost, thank you everyone for joining today. Really looking forward to a great discussion. Should we kick off and dive right in and talk about it? I know 20 minutes won't go super long. Usually these things are about an hour, but let's maybe dive in first. And this is a question for all the panelists. How do you see or envision AI reshaping the future of DevSecOps? I think particularly the way that organizations address security threats.
I guess I'll start, Gabe. John Falk, and I think there's a lot of potential to accelerate the threat detection and mitigation process that everyone is looking for. I think with AI, as it continues to progress, it's going to allow teams to, in an early stage, identify potential vulnerabilities and how they would be exploited, right? And I think what we're seeing is the individuals that are exploiting vulnerabilities are most likely eventually going to be using AI from that perspective, right? To create those exploits and identify vulnerabilities that they can take advantage of. And so on the converse side, teams are going to be using AI to mitigate those risks and those threats so they can reduce the risk of applications that are either going into production or are currently in production, so they can increase the confidence of the organization that the applications they have deployed are meeting the business demand from a secure perspective. So I think there's just tremendous potential around what AI can deliver in that DevSecOps environment.
So I look at AI, it's a double-edged sword right now. I think as you've laid out, yes, the bad guys are going to use, the threat actors are going to use AI against us. And we've got to be able to defend AI type of attacks or AI assisted attacks. But it's not just the bad guys who are going to use AI. It's our own developers and DevOps teams and platform engineers and SREs who are going to use AI to go faster, do more. And we can't be the anchor on them going faster. We have got to figure out how to allow them, enable them to go faster, do more securely. And in my mind, the only way we could do that if they're using AI is if we're using AI, right? Because, it's kind of an arms race, if you will, all around. So I think while we need to figure out how to defend against AI-enhanced threats, and we need to figure out how to enable AI-enhanced CI/CD and development to go as fast as we can allow them to go, as fast as they can go. We need to figure out how to leverage AI to make all those things happen and to increase our security. Status quo is not good enough, right? What can we do with AI to make, you mentioned vulnerability scanning. Yeah, that's right? Can we do it with more testing? Can we build AI right into our IDEs so that we're shifting left? But shifting left by itself is not enough either. We need to shift everywhere, right? We need to have that security focus everywhere all at once, like the movie. But an AI gives us that, I think, power to do that. So I'm bullish on what AI can do for us in DevSecOps, in DevOps in general.
Yeah, and that distinction between DevSecOps and DevOps, Alan, you and I have talked about this before, but I guess in your mind, what lessons do you feel like DevSecOps specifically can take from traditional DevOps culture? How do you see the two evolving in the future? I guess, is one going to overtake the other? Will DevSecOps just become the more common terminology and phrasing, and security is just going to become everywhere as it should be? But where do you see that?
So this is right 9-10 years ago. I started the DevSecOps sessions at RSA that we do every year on Monday of RSA week. And back then it was hard bringing the security community into the DevOps tribe, and they didn't always think it was real. But DevSecOps is real. As a matter of fact, it's gotten to the point where DevSecOps is DevOps today. When you look at leading DevOps platforms, public companies, private companies, the leading DevOps platforms, they all call themselves DevSecOps platforms, not DevOps, right? I don't care whether we're talking about GitHub and GitLab or Cloudbees or JFrog or Harness or any of the CI/CD players. They all call themselves DevSecOps. So DevSecOps is DevOps because in today's world, you can't develop and deploy software if you're not doing it securely. The world won't stand for that anymore. And so DevSecOps is DevOps.
Do you agree with that philosophy? Yeah.
And I just want to kind of chime in on that because I think you're spot on, Alan. So as a focused cybersecurity individual for many years, even I don't really refer to it as DevSecOps purposely. I call it DevOps conversationally. It's part of a cultural shift in how we actually do engage with development teams, the QA teams, how we, when I say we, I mean security. And we have to have those conversations using the actual verbiage that the development teams are used to. So again, how are we really embedding, as you mentioned earlier, that whole shift anywhere principle? Going back to your initial question as well, Gabe, the aspect, and John alluded to this, as far as AI goes in accelerating how we do it quicker, how we embed ourselves, to kind of just sit behind the scenes from a security perspective. I think we're already starting to do that effectively. What I mean by that is, and even Alan alluded to this, is embedding security testing principles and capabilities into developers' hands, into the developers' tools, the IDEs, and providing them the guidance, leveraging AI, as to where their security defects, not vulnerabilities, defects, because they think defects are, but not just where they are. How do we guide them to actually resolve them effectively and quickly? And in that world, security now takes actually the seat of a governance function, right? So security is no longer kind of pumping the brakes, asking the team to go back and fix these security issues, slowing things down. They're actually getting things resolved at the development side through QA all the way through, and security basically sits over the top in a governance function that says, thank you, you've delivered what we needed from a security perspective. We're hands off, we're not slowing you down any longer, and we're enabling you now going forward with AI kind of at the core helping do that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? So lots of different benefits, and of course, this is the big push and shift where organizations should be. But I guess, Kelly, maybe from your perspective, what do you see as the biggest hurdles for organizations when they're transitioning to this culture of a DevOps and security merged together, DevSecOps, right? How can they overcome without overwhelming their teams? I know that that's a real thing as well.
Yeah, so two things I run into personally. I'm curious in all the different roles here, what you guys see, but one of them is from an implementation perspective, it's a boil the ocean thing, right? We're going to do deep and we're going to do wide all at once, and it's headed for disaster, right? Has to be much more iterative than that. But the other thing is more a cultural mind shift in the people in the teams. What we find is, and I think this is just human nature, that when there's a change like this, a lot of the teams, the individuals will say, okay, where do I do my same thing in the new tool or in the new process? And it's not your same thing. It's a little different, right? You collaborate in slightly different ways with people, that how information flows. And so it gets really awkward. And so you have those conversations with them of, well, I'm still doing the same thing. We just call it something different. It's like, well, you're not. It's going to work a little bit differently. Where things come from are going to be different. How you share information is different. And I think proactively preparing the teams for what that is going to be like helps get them in the right mindset to make that change. And that's really, it's hard to change your perspective.
Yeah, I guess, Alan, looking at like the face of complexity, because I know that continues to grow. You probably heard a lot and at the conference you were here in Austin with too, but just looking at how complex that multi-cloud environments are becoming, they're just burgeoning everywhere. What sort of key practices are you hearing or things that maybe you probably have started to see quite a lot of companies adopting and ensuring security and making sure that it hits and remains a core component of DevOps processes overall?
Yeah. So, a couple of things. And I'll pick up from what Kelly said and run into your question, Gabe, is it's about being a team. And a lot of people would, the whole cultural aspect of DevOps, people give short shrift to because they focus on tools and outcome. But when you're a team, you're a team. And a team is made up of different components, right? You have offensive players, defensive players, depending what sport or whatever you're in. Security has to be part of the team, but we can't expect developers to be the security people. They could be security conscious, they could be security champions, but we as a security industry have to be good teammates. And that doesn't mean thinking we are the be all and end all when it comes to how things should be done, but we need to, like any good team, there's give and take, and you learn to be a good team. I think companies that are successful are doing that. They're making security part of their culture, part of their team, but they're not asking developers or QA people to become security professionals. If we were all security professionals, what a wonderful world it would be, but we probably wouldn't be doing too much development. So I think that's the first thing that we see. The second thing that we're seeing is, look, whether it's ML ops, AI ops, that kind of machine learning or generative AI, we are seeing these technologies being used at the problem. And guys, make no mistake, where the battlefront is today is the software supply chain, right? Software supply chain security is where the DevSecOps battle is being fought day in and day out, right? We've got to make sure, obviously the further west we go, or the further left we go, excuse me, I'm looking at a compass thinking west, but the further left we go, the easier it is, or the cheaper it may be to fix things. But that software supply chain starts way out left and goes all the way through, even after deployment. Mm-hmm. And that at every stop along that way, every stop in that software supply chain, we've got to be thinking about how secure is that? Are we documenting it? Do we have our SBOMs in place so that people know where that component came from? What are we doing to make sure these components are safe when we add them to our supply chain? Right? Because that's where today's attacks seem to be coming from. And so I think as I look at it today, I know we've been talking about software supply chain security now for the last couple of years, but that's where the battle is going. That entire supply chain. And when you boil it down, that's what DevOps and DevSecOps is really. It's about that supply chain, that software development lifecycle. And we can't, too much DevSecOps gets focused on how can I make the developer develop more secure code. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think we should do that. But we got to think, further right on this supply chain as it moves beyond the developer to the QA person, to the SREs. What's platform engineering doing to set the guardrails and so forth in place for secure
deployment, all those things,
yeah, and all the way to deployment and even post-deployment, right? The job doesn't end. For those of us who've been in security a long time, it used to be all about post-deployment, right? We can't all of a sudden forget, assume, it's deployed, it's secure. It's not. That has to continue, part of the supply chain, part of the life cycle.
And it's much more expensive to fix things after the fact too.
So
it gets exponentially. I'm sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
I was just going to say, then we should, petition the world to think that DevOps is not simply based on the two parts of the word. We actually mean planning and security and deployment and test and all those things. It's not just the DevOps piece, even though that's the piece that we picked out. The other thing
Yep.
is I would like to petition that we start using West and East. I actually like that. I've never thought of that before. We need to shift more West, Alan, like you said, and more East in our endeavors. I'm going to steal that next time.
That's actually a good idea, but that's how I was thinking about it. And
Yeah,
remember your
it's
true
true.
north then, right? Because that's a good thing
It's a
to
whole
think
new
about.
thing. You just invented it.
Yeah.
We were here to witness it.
Right here, you
It's
heard
true.
it here first on the Open Text Conference.
That's
But
right. That's right.
We're going to have a whole series on the compass of DevOps and DevSecOps. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
I love it.
You know
Now,
what? Look for it on DevOps.com. But,
There you go.
but seriously, I do think we need to think about that. And AI is going to look. You can't yet talk about any of these things without thinking about how is AI. You know, one of the things at the event I was at last week is there's about 27 million developers in the world today, and it might be 40 million they used to say by 2030 or 2035. It's a huge jump, not quite double, but a huge jump. With AI, we might have 500 million developers by 2035. They may not be the developers that we're servicing today who are sort of professional developers, but in a world where natural language input can create applications on the fly, in essence, anybody can be a developer. And even us on here, go on and just say, I want an application that does this, this, and that, in this environment. And it's done. How do we secure those? How? I mean, do we also say, oh, by the way, make it secure? You know,
I love that you brought up
be
AI too, Alan, because the one thing that I'm thinking as well is it's increasingly being integrated across all of these different pipelines. So I know that we're kind of running short on our time here today, but how, maybe for everyone, how do you see AI enhancing security testing, vulnerability detection? Are there any specific areas where you feel like AI is going to start outperforming traditional methods? In a lot of the cases, they probably already have. And I know that things that we hear a lot are concerns over reliance on AI especially for critical security decisions, but just collectively from the team, how do you see all of those kind of fitting in?
Anybody going to jump on that, or?
I'll take one. I think, well, two things I think in general. One is pattern detection. You know, with the, you know, compared to just people doing it or more, you know, non-digital ways, I guess. Finding those patterns with bigger data sets, you have to have the bigger data set to find the pattern, but human eyes can't work that fast. It's just too slow. And I think, to your point, the over-reliance, I think that always becomes a problem, right? We become too reliant on anything that's autonomous, you know, whether it's development, coding, security, cars, you know, when we sign off, things can get weird. So it's a balance, but that's my take. I'm curious, you guys.
Anybody else want to jump in? I felt like I talked too much.
No, it's all good. I agree with what you're saying, Kelly. I think it is a fine balance between the two. As we kind of talked about a little earlier, you know, AI from the bad guys' perspective, they are well ahead of us. Let's be honest. That's the reality of it. They always are ahead of us. The fact, though, that we're starting to actually implement capability to help the efficiency of, again, picking off where these security issues may be, to be able to provide that quicker time to fix and then release is really helping everyone along that path. So again, I think we're at the early stages of that, though there's some good capability that started to come out there. Part of that is also a bit of the education, I think, Alan, you alluded to, from the developer side. Developers aren't trying to go and, you know, develop code that has security defects, right? They're racing to get a application out the door to drive revenue typically behind it. And now by being able to actually embed it back in again to their hands of where their security issues may reside, it's also educating them on the fly. It's making them happy because, again, they're able to release what they desire, which is secure code at the end of the day. So again, those things are all in early infancy, moving in the right direction.
Definitely. And I'll just add, and per Alan, what you brought up in the beginning is security can't be an anchor in the DevOps process. Security has to move at the pace of DevOps for it to be embraced and be effective. And I think AI is going to give security the ability and capability to sustain that pace so teams can maintain a high level of velocity and decrease the time to market, because that's why they implemented a DevOps practice to start with, right? They want to increase velocity, decrease time to market, but they have to do it in a secure fashion. And AI needs to be embedded in that process in order to bring that to market.
All right, guys. Thank you. Go ahead.
No, I agree.
Well, we are, I think, close to our time right now, but maybe rapid fire really quick. What is one thing that organizations can quickly bring back to their teams, in implementing DevSecOps, AI-powered DevSecOps, and maybe like a quick phrase from each of you? Sort of a tactical, practical thing.
Make AI your friend, not your enemy. Don't fear it, embrace it, use it, leverage it.
I would say collaborate, partner, right? Really working close together, and this kind of historical aspect of separation, as I look at it, is church and state between development and security. Let's get rid of that, embed, work together, very close collaboration.
It's kind of what I took away from all of you, quite frankly, which is, you don't want to be the party of no. Be proactive in how you can use it, and start with practical ways, right? And then build on that foundation.
Yeah, and just come forward with an AI strategy for your organization that includes all aspects of AI as it relates to the DevOps process. Organizations today just need to have an AI strategy. Otherwise, they're missing the market and they're going to be left behind.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate the time. Want to just graciously give as much kudos as I can to each of you for jumping in today and talking about some really hot topics when it comes to what the industry is really focused on between security, DevOps, AI, all of those things converging into one another. So thank you very much for taking the time. Hope everyone got a lot of information from this, some practical, tactical tips you could take back to your organizations. And with that, I will sign off and look forward to having you join us in the rest of the sessions that we have here in the DevSecOps Virtual Summit. Thank you. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.